So here we are, video 18 out of 90. Is it 20%? I think so. And so in this video, unpacking this whole idea of what gets measured gets managed, or what gets measured improves. But the key to this for me is measuring the right stuff. And I was profoundly influenced by reading the book and watching the movie multiple times, Moneyball, which has inspired me to create what I now call Mastery in the Moneyball Method. And the whole idea is these ideas can be applied to anything that you have done in the past, as far as maybe coaching, or you've done a course, or you've bought a bit of software, or you've bought some resource or a system or something, and you didn't get the value out of it that you thought in the end. And I believe that I've really identified why that is the case. And when you watch the movie Moneyball, the very first piece of it that really impacted me was when the character Peter Brand, because Peter Brand didn't actually exist. When you read the book Moneyball, the guy was DePodesta, something like that. Can't remember his first name. Was the actual guy that worked with Billy Beane, the general manager. But in the movie, for whatever reason, there was this fictitious character called Peter Brand. But anyway, they're talking in the car park because Peter Brand didn't want to be overheard talking about this, and he basically said that there is an epidemic failure within the baseball industry, and that failure was that the big rich teams are spending millions upon millions of dollars buying players. And what they're doing when they're buying players is they're buying potential. That guy's got a good swing. That guy runs fast. That guy has some sort of amazing skill. But they're paying for the potential. Whereas what Peter Brand was talking about, he'd been influenced by Bill James, another guy that was right into mathematics and in relation to statistics around baseball. And Peter Brand was saying that the epidemic failure is that big teams are spending money buying players. What they need to do is be buying wins. And what that meant was they needed to dive down and find out what was the thing that needed to be measured and identified that would buy wins. And effectively, they settled on the get on base percentage. So every time someone comes to bat, what was the percentage chance that they would get on base? And why that was important is if you get on base, you can't get out, which means your team stays batting and it gives you the chance to score, to win. When you're in the field, you can't score, therefore you don't improve your position. The only thing you're doing when you're in the field is to try and get the batting team out so you can then bat. And so they drilled down to this one specific measurement of get on base percentage. And the issue with this was everybody else in baseball thought that this was crap, because for years and years, 100 plus years, they'd been selecting players. The scouts had been selecting players based on their experience and their knowledge. So basically a gut feel. And so what I'm suggesting is that in a building business, or any business for that matter, you need to start to figure out what the get on base percentage measurements are. So what are the things that we really need to measure to have a successful business? As an example, for a building business, what I see so often, far too often than it should be, is in the pricing and just the measurement and management of the financial component of a building project, is that most builders work on a hope strategy, so that they will figure out pricing and they will add markups and margins and all of this stuff that makes it incredibly confusing. What is the thing that causes a business to go out of business? And I don't know of too many businesses that have gone out of business because they made too much money. They may have been having a large turnover, but that's just the money coming in. It's the money that you get to keep that keeps you in business, and that is the net profit. And so when you are measuring and tracking the progress of a project, I suggest that you should have at least one criteria where you are measuring the net profit throughout the project that you are receiving, and you are putting away and protecting it till the end of the project, because it's not really your money until you've delivered on expectations. But you should grab it and put it away and put armed guards and angry dogs and barbed wire fence around it so it can't be touched until the end of the project, because most builders, they working on a hope strategy, and their profit is what is left over at the end of a project. And if they didn't make much profit, or they made far less profit, or they didn't make any profit at the end of a project because it got out of control here, there, or somewhere, what can you do about it at the end of the project? Nothing. So you've got to be measuring it and managing it throughout the project. So if it starts to get a bit off track, at least we've got the opportunity to do something about it. We've got to rally the troops and get them focused and start to look for more efficiencies and ways that we can stem the tide and stop losing even more of the profit. Some builders I know don't even look at that until they're working with their accountant some months after the financial year is finished. And what chance have you got to fix anything at that stage? So we've got to be really focused on what are the get on base measurements rather than these potential measurements that we're looking at, because exactly the same thing is happening in the building industry as Peter Brand in the movie identified is happening in the baseball industry. There is an epidemic failure in the building industry and in small business to look at what really does make the difference. And so we get sucked into all of these ideas and looking at apparent problems and trying to fix things with systems when we don't really know what the problem is. And this sort of taps into what I've spoken about in a couple of previous videos. As I said, this is 18 out of 90. A few of the previous videos, I've unpacked parts of this idea as well. But the key with this video is to understand that there are things that you measure, and they are vanity metrics like turnover and that sort of thing. And then there are metrics that you need to measure that absolutely get on base metrics, such as your net profit. And I love the whole Mike Michalowicz profit first, because we're not measuring profit from the profit and loss sheet or some predictive spreadsheet you've created. It's measured by cash that is not required to pay for anything after all of the bills are paid, and it's cash sitting in a bank account that is there to reward you for your risk and your sacrifice and your efforts as the owner of the business. And it's cash. It's not an entry on some fictitious profit and loss sheet where people have just put stuff in columns to make it look good. And I'm not shit-canning the accounting side of things. You need the accounting side of things. This doesn't affect the accounting side of things, but it does affect your longevity and your stability of your business if you are measuring the right thing. So that's the message in this video 18. If you agree with it, let me know. If you disagree with it, let me know. Please reach out to me through LinkedIn. Let's have a conversation about it. I'd love to learn from your perspective. Love having these conversations, and learning more and more about the principles that will really help a business be more successful, rather than getting sucked into the generally accepted practices that are out there. That's what we call them, the GAPS, generally accepted practices, versus the get on base activity. And if you can make that distinction between not getting sucked into the generally accepted practices and identifying what your get on base actions are and start to measure them, I guarantee you it will change the game for you. Hope that made sense. This is video 18 out of 90. I'm set myself an objective to do a video a day for 90 days for the purposes of me learning how to explain this stuff and learning the nuances of these concepts at a deeper level, so I'm more valuable to those people that we help through our programs and conversations. Hope that makes sense. See you in video 19. That is all. Bye for now.